so that people can also sit at the back. Even 문수부절, please come forward. Closer.
전부 다. 네? 그러니까 뭐 희약고 뭐 김있고 잠있고 뭐 먹고.
I wonder why everyone was named 영자, 민자, and 순자.
900일 끝난 날 꿈에서 640또 1100번 하고 소리가 들렸는데요. 뭔 산수를 했나. 잠이 깊이 들지도 않았는데 생생하게 들렸습니다. 궁금합니다.
Before we start with the teaching, there's a question.
근데 이제
For the 1,000-day prayer, after I was done with 900 days, I had some dream. Even the dream was not very deep, but I remember very clearly about the dream.
그때 이제 꾸어진 꿈일 거예요. 그리고 이제 640, 1100번 하고 또 그것도
Well, you remember because you're not deep in sleep.
복금 뭐 당첨 번호도 아니고
If you're in a very deep state of sleep,
그죠?
you're not in the deep state of sleep and you dreamt it. And also, with the numbers that you have seen, do not buy the lottery. I don't think it's a number with which you can win a lottery, but it is just a dream.
뭐 소원을 성취한다. 보통 우리가 소원이라는 것이 우리의 소원은 통일도 없잖아요.
I told you all the time, and even online, I have repeatedly said this. A prayer, if we pray now, people claim that our wishes will come true. But when we say it's a wish, it's not even the unification of Korea. What is our dream? Our dream is good school for our child and also health.
그렇죠, 그죠? 항상 우리가 생각할 때
and also becoming rich.
빌면 거지가 돼버리고.
Let's achieve our greediness in this mundane world.
아주 착한 사람이라.
So all the time when we think, well, such dreams are, if you pray, then you become poor. And if you accumulate, then you become a very good person. Even farming,
시금밥두거리 하나 주시오. 그럼 거지고, 그죠? 내가 안 굶기 위해서 봄에 씨앗을 뿌리고 가을에 곡식을 거두면 착한 농부고, 그러잖아요, 그죠? 네?
even farming, if you just come and beg for some food, leftover food, then you are a beggar. But then, in order not to starve, if you plant seeds in spring and if you harvest in autumn, then you are a good farmer. So is farmer better or is a beggar better? The characteristics of the beggar is that they don't want to do farming and they also hate starving. That's their property or characteristics. And the farmer, although it is difficult to plant and also do the agriculture, he does it. You understand? People told me not to say this about the makeups. Well, you need to apply makeup. Then you listen to the virtue that you listen to the virtue that you're not old, but
차이예요. 그래서 우리가 기복 불교 그러면 거지 불교야 나는.
Well, whatever it is, the difference between a beggar and also a good farmer is that the things which are easy to do and also hoping or praying for things that I have not done or wishing for things I have not done anything for. In even this Buddhism, that when you're praying for something, that is Buddhism of very poor starvation, because you have done nothing to accumulate the merit, but in fact you are expecting a lot in return. And so I don't know what kind of 1,000 day prayer that you had, but she had, but a prayer is something to do, such as if my hearts were evil, then it's to change for the better, because we have many bad habits, and so we don't change it easily. So we need to pray more and better, and it's to aspire to live a different life, to live a better life. So repentance and also aspiration, we call it prayer. And also reciting mantra, we just say it's a recitation of mantra, but we don't say it's a prayer. But for a lot of people, everything is a prayer, just murmuring or even reciting mantra or closing their eyes with and also with a salutation. Everything is a prayer, so you need to be precise about it. I saw the number 640 and 100 something in the dream, and I heard the sound. That's written in this question. But when I dream in the night, I dream about bodhisattvas a lot. I see great bodhisattvas. When I see them, well, it's not like I believe I'm not counting numbers or accounts in my dream. So this is just a dream. This is just a branch of my thoughts, and also the subconsciousness, and also between my consciousness is a phenomenon that occur between the two. There's nothing special about it, and there's also nothing different from it. So, and also a lot of things saying that even this reality which we when you pinch, we say ouch, and a lot of things also think it's a dream, because this also changes. And so people who play in the dream, they are also living a life that's very void. And also if we have attachments for life, which is also not true, then this is also something not very this is not something that we need to hold on to. Didn't I say about the poem a lot? I didn't. In olden times, since there are no hotels, so Venerable Sasan, when he went on a trip, he would sleep often in other place, in other people's houses. And so after getting breakfast the next day, and so he said, because he didn't have money, so he said things like, "Oh, yesterday I had a dream, and I saw great things about it." And Venerable Sasan was just looking at it, and he wrote a poem that, well, the guest is talking about dream. Yes, when I saw, he's also talking about dream in his own dream. That the fact that he's talking right now is also a dream, and he's talking about dream. So don't just argue about a dream. This is also not very. There's nothing to hold on to in the dream, whether you saw 1,100 or 10,000, 10,100. Well, it's just a smaller number, so don't believe in it.
단절하고 내가 좋은 생각들과 좋은
So
행을
with this
습관을
kind of things,
길러서 살겠습니다 하고 그 기도문이라는 것은 전부
you
다
should not
여러분
say
천주교
this and that
안에
because of
내용이
such
내가
things.
이제 참여합니다.
But a
살생할 때
prayer
참여합니다.
is
도둑질
done
할
in
때
order
참여합니다.
to
거짓말
attain
할 때
happiness in
참여합니다.
life, and
욕심
also
부릴 때
you should cut
참여합니다.
off the
그리고
bad
또 가서
thoughts,
욕심
and
부리고
also
그리고
try
또
to
가서
cultivate the good
하고
habits.
그러잖아요, 그죠?
And such
그러니까
a
자꾸 그러니까 또
prayer,
해라, 또 해라.
whether in also other
영재
mantras in whether it's 1000 eyes or hence sutra or other things, you have to in most of those prayers it's written that I repent the things I have done. But after reciting them, you go and you repeat them again. And so that's why we tell you to do it again and again. After you say, I will not commit sins, I will not do bad things, but then you go and again you do gambling in order to stay away from Alzheimer. But that is actually stealing. On the recorder, you have put the 1000 hands, etc.
옆에서 전구업체를 하고 앉았는데도 그러고 앉았다니까. 그거 참 진짜 환장하려고 그러시라.
The recitation to clear your previous past karmas are being recited, but beside it, you're backbiting about someone. There's something that's amazing. And so a lot of people, when they recite sutras in the morning, you do that 3 times a day in the morning. And then the whole day, you talk about other things and other people. And that's why I asked you to do it again.
자꾸 그거 하라고 하는 것이 다른 거라고 하는 거 아닙니다. 그래서 내가 시청 법회할 때 자꾸 지금 그거 하나하나를 다 촬영해서 다 올려서 놓으면 전부 다 나중에
That's why you're asked to repeat your mantras again.
행법에 지금 시청 법회를 하면서는 모든
you're asked to pray to do that, not for something else. So when I do the teaching for the city hall, when all of them are recorded and put online, for the Mahayana practice or the practice methods, including the meditation and also observation or imagery, I think this could also be organized into some sort of teaching, and that's what I thought maybe we could also collaborate that into teaching.
말이 여러 가지야. 말이 여러 가지인데 일체 종지를 이루었다. 일체 종지를 이루었다. 그 말도 기본.
Here in this writing, the author is clearly explaining that all teachings of Buddha is to lead to the enlightenment ultimately. So when we say enlightenment, it has many things like attaining omniscience. That's also true. And also left all the happiness and sadness in the life, left all the agony and also greediness, and also experience voidness and also attain nirvana or enlightenment, or even the 3 evils are gone. That's also true. All of them are true, but ideally we say attain nirvana. The agony that arises in a very torturous manner has been eliminated. So motivation for Buddhism is very clear. So Kambashila also said it helps everyone, because this talks about how to get rid of our agony. So when you feed some very hungry people meals, then momentarily you can save them from starvation, but you cannot actually save them from your agony. So the practitioners, the method with which they help others should be something to do with the teaching. Others, they do not have so much meanings, whether you give them a cloth or other things. But even those, you have to do them.
분명히 설명하고 있다. 따라서 진열을 바로
If you
이해하고
ask
teaching을
those
합니다.
people who are already a monks, if they are not required to do, they have to do it, and you also have to do it with your best, because this is all connected to you getting rid of your greediness.
이 말로는 그런 얘기거든.
Therefore, it is very important to understand suchness or trueness. 대승기실론 is the best text to understand about suchness.
제가 공성인 것을 갖다 안 것을 얘기한 거예요.
In other words, we can explain that something is truly so, but then if you ask what is truly so, what is the something? In truth, if there is nothing which is false, in other words, it also implies that we have come to an understanding that everything does not have its special features and everything is void.
일체 존재의 무자성이고 거기에 영원 불변한
Even Buddha himself, he attained enlightenment after understanding the ultimate truths.
현상에 따라서 여러 변화가 일어나는 것을 속죄라 그런다 그런 얘기야. 속죄라 그런데 그래서 부처님은 이 진재
So everything vanishes after some time, and after understanding that the absolute or ultimate truth of emptiness without differentiation. So after understanding this, Buddha has attained the enlightenment, and Buddha has experiences. And so in Diamond Sutra we write, we refer to this. And also the absolute truth about of emptiness of offering refers to when we actually perform this act of offering, it is for the goodness of others and also for goodness of ourselves. But in Dharma Sutra, well, although it is written as the offering, but the person who is offering and also the person who is benefited from offering and also the object which is being offered, they are all void, and understanding the characteristics of this voidness is important. Since they're void, there's no reason for me to get them back after my death. And also, if you understand it from the truth of emptiness, you also know that since it's empty, I have not received it and they have not given. And also, since it's void, the object itself has not been exchanged. And that is the true understanding or true emptiness of offering. But for us, even when we give to our child, when we give it, we understand that it is almost as empty because I am mother, right? And so we give them. But after we give them, when the child is not doing me good deeds, or when the child is making me a little sad, you feel bad because you have given something and they have received something. And if that happens, then it is not part of absolute truth of emptiness. So when we say we follow the restrictions or discipline, there is I who follows up the discipline, and there is also the object which is not being harmed, and also there is the regulation to obey. But if there is no I, if there is no object, and if there is no discipline to follow, then it is the absolute discipline. So we can also say well, if your mind has attained voidness and if it's clear, then we say that's absolute discipline too. So because Buddha has attained this level, we say he has gotten his enlightenment. And so when we also tell other people to gain enlightenment as a greeting method, it's a really good thing. It's even better than become rich. When people say, I hope you'll be struck with the money lightning, there's a movie, some title about like 7 people, and in the gold mine, they carry the gold in the train, and that has been stolen, and and so there was a fight between the thieves in order to take them, and in the end there were 2 people, and in the storage they were shooting each other in the train, and one person got shot and died, but the other person was not shot, but because the blood was hit on the top, and so all the gold was flowing down, and he was so happy that he was getting all the gold, but he was actually buried beneath the gold because it's heavy, and everyone died in the end, and the gold killed everyone. But it's not the gold, it's actually the greediness of people. So if amongst them, if one of them has acquired the trueness, and if the person had only realized that everything is void and everything does not have everlasting personality, or there's no suchness in this, then they would not have died. And I thought, but still, there are some people, or even I, wish that we were at that spot.
세상에 하여튼 철학이 많아. 그래서 나는 맨날 그런 철학을 깨끗 철학이라고 그렇게 얘기하는데.
In this world, there are so many different philosophical perceptions, but the proper perception is the one only that leads to the ultimate truth. There are many different philosophies in this world, and in olden times I used to refer to them as useless philosophy. There are so many different philosophies with diverse names, but in reality, if you ask, although they have studied different philosophies, if their agony has disappeared, that hasn't actually been so. Or even the start, or even Carl, Marx, or Jung, they have developed different philosophies, but some people committed suicide, and some people died out of voidness, and some people also died on the street. What kind of philosophy is so miserable? And although you call that philosophy, in Buddhism, if you realize that they are actually not being helpful to you, you realize that they are actually not very meaningful. They don't have so much meaning. And even the Confucianism, it seems like they do respect the manners a lot, but just because you respect the manners, does it mean that your agony disappears? It doesn't. So therefore, although you have studied the Confucianism so much, you're still in the Joseon dynasty. So whatever it is, although there are so many different philosophical perceptions, the ultimate trueness, the only philosophy that leads to the ultimate trueness is the Buddhist philosophy. And if you approach it in the realistic manner, you realize that they do not have actual form. And there are also people who doesn't know what to do because of the reactions. But those people who also does the psychology studies and also the physics of cosmos, after they have realized, they thought there is something in this world, but after all that they have done, they realize that it's empty and they feel very void. They say a lot of those things. In this style of life, do you think it is right to follow superstition? It doesn't make sense at all. If we follow improper perception, then it is bound we are bound to enter into the wrong path or stop in between. So if we follow the wrong perception or wrong philosophy, then
동쪽으로 가고자 하나 서쪽으로 가는 꼬라지가 딱 되고 만단 말이야. 나는 지금 서울로 간다고 하는데 지금 제주도로 된다고.
then although we desire to go to the east, we are actually going to the west. There is a teaching of Venerable Wonhyo. So although you desire to go to the east, you're actually going towards the west. So although you're saying that you're going to Seoul, you're actually going to Jeju.
25시간 걸렸다 그랬잖아요. 근데 길이 멀어서 길이 안 좋기도 하고 막 그렇게.
About 16 to 17 years back, when I was going to Dharamshala for the first time, I was on the tour bus, and from Delhi to Dharamshala, it took me 25 hours. And even the road was bad, but because in India,
가다 보니까 도로 거꾸로 돌아와.
the guides and the driver, although they do not know the proper road, they never admit that they don't know. And even if they are not very clear, they still go. They just proceed. And if they go, and after going through many hours, they come back. And so it's like if you go to 1.5 an hour, proceed, and then if you just return 1.5 an hour, it's already 3 hours. And if you do that 2 to 3 times, you are already throwing away 10 hours on the street. And when you ask why are you going that way, they also blame someone else, and the person who has also taught the wrong way is also an Indian. And also on top of that, the road directions are not shown just like us. But even the road directions, it's made of steel, but some of them are so rusted you cannot read well, and some of them they show the wrong direction, and so you're not able to read the proper road. And even the driver, he doesn't know the way properly, and such things are also the wrong perceptions, and you have not even experienced them, and you don't even know properly, but you assume that if you follow this path, that will be okay. And so even when you have a stomach ache, and the person who is beside that person felt a little relieved when he drank the little sweet water, and they recommend him to drink sweet water. But then you don't know what kind of stomach pain the person has, and you just think that if it's not so, then just let it be. And so if you have the wrong perceptions, and if you teach, and you also need to know which direction you will be arriving with the wrong perception that you are teaching. But you assume that you are a great teacher, and as if you are someone great, in order to gain honor and the name that you are a great person, and also money and fame, they do a lot of tricky works. In India, a person thousands of people gather to see him, and they come in robes, and he comes in robe, and he says that if you just shake the hand once, then you can have the rice in the hand, and then throw away the rice, and then people gather to get the rice, and a lot of magicians, they excel in this, and that's also a cheating. And so even if we say that there was rice out of air, then it is just a rice. What can that do? And with that, the person has cheated a lot of people, and also has earned a lot of money, and has his own private jet. And so nowadays, if people complain, people say, well, he was very famous and had a lot of fame. But just because you have a fame, those talents or entertainers, they do not say the truth. And before, there was a monk, and he was teaching only the truthness. And so people did not believe in him, and they chased him away. And since that's because people, the believers, lay people, they believe in the wrong teachings. And since the monk, he felt very bad about it, and he thought, well, this is the right teaching. And when he was in a cave, he felt so bad about it, and so he sat on a rock and started teaching. And he started teaching as if there are people out in the street. And it was said that even the trees bowed when he was giving the teaching. Well, even the trees are nodding, look at it, my teachings are right. And so, well, even if he said the right teachings, the people who believe in the wrong things, they do not believe much. But nowadays, if that is a little famous, then people just believe that that is correct. But being famous and also being truthful, they do not actually have the proper connection. Well, entertainer Young is more famous than me, and even Chun Jian is more famous than me, and Chang Donggan is more handsome than me, and even younger. Even Ha Jung-woo, he was handsome too. But just because of that, do they teach Buddhist teachings? It is not related to how you look or how famous you are. And also, some said, that when he was saying, that monk was saying this and that, he was actually saying the wrong things. It was not in the proper text. And they answered to me that, well, he even had gray hair and he was old. Just because you are older doesn't mean you'll be saying the right thing. Where those people who keep saying wrong things, when they age, they even more say worse things. Well, someone said, Venerable Jinok, I think I am finally coming to the right temple. And when I asked which is right temple, and he said, I'm going to Jogejong. And when I said, you cannot even trust Jogejong, he said, yes, you cannot even trust Jogejong, but how do you know that Jogejong is teaching the right thing? Do you believe in them? Well, he said he's trying to believe, but he is not actually working properly because he's trying not to drink, but he keeps drinking too. Well, other than the Buddhist teachings, there is nothing else to trust. What can you believe in? Puriwa, can you believe in your husband? But still, you still have many years to live. That's why you're not giving the response. Well, it's very political.
잘못된 길로 들어가고 그러면 삿된 법으로 잘못된 길을 들어가면 차라리 시작도 아는 것만 또 못해. 가다가 중지하면 아니 간만 못하리라 그러잖아요, 그죠?
So if you follow the improper perception, then you are bound to enter into the wrong path or follow the wrong teachings. Well, if you follow the wrong teachings and if you enter into the wrong path, then it's worse than even not starting it. We also have the saying that if you're going to stop, then it's better not even to do it. Well, but even that saying is wrong. Or if you stop in between, then maybe it's worse than not doing it. But well, you have also heard about this, right? When I was carrying the ginseng from Gangwon, and when I actually arrived all the way to Yasu, I took a rest in between, and when I saw a pot, and when I saw the pot, there was gold inside, and I have a lot of ginseng, and I also have a lot of gold in front of me. Then what should I bring? I'm unable to carry both. Well, I brought all the way from Gangwon the ginseng, and how bad is it to leave it here? And the person felt, well, the things that the person has done so far was he was afraid that they would go to waste, and so he came to Yasu and said, I felt bad about throwing away all the efforts I've done so far, and so I threw away the gold, and I brought the ginseng. And what is that so? That's almost like
좀 옷이 좋은 거라고 샀어.
And that's almost like you fear that the things that you have brought, or even in the kitchen, the things that you have cooked so far, you fear they're going for waste, and so you feel bad about it, and you eat them. And what happens to you? You become fat.
신으려고 발을 이렇게 허리를 구부리다가 그냥 반주가 탁
And well, let's say you paid a lot of money to buy a clothes, and now when you try to wear it, you become so fat that the clothes don't fit you.
그렇게 하면 안 되겠죠. 예.
And you also try to wear the clothes,
수행을 해야 되는
and you sit down to wear the clothes, but then you realize that you're not able to wear them.
그 뭐라 그러냐면
Where if you do that, that's not right, right?
태운 게 아까워서
So especially when you're doing the practice, Buddhist practice, if you feel that there is wrong, then there is there's not even the need to study them furthermore, but just throw them away.
우리
But then what do you feel? You still feel bad that the things that you have done so far, you fear they're going for waste. And then what happens? If you are not able to let them go, then your house will have a lot of problems.
식단을 내리치듯이 쳐버려야 돼. 하루아침에 탁 끊어버려. 아니다.
Even the dharma, even the bad dharmas that we have right now, if you feel that they are not right or they are not correct, then
굉장히 한두 가지가 썩었어.
and just like you cut down everything, you have to cut them off all in a day.
매주를 치대는 게 그래도 맛이 안 나잖아. 썩은 거니까. 나올 리가 없지. 썩어버려.
You should not feel bad, or you should not feel bad that you're actually throwing them away. Well, in the olden times, when they made the soybean paste, and it was not right, it was going wrong, and you felt bad about it, and so you still try to do a little better. And so if you put a lot of things in there in order to make that right, well, that actually goes further bad. When you're throwing them away, you should just let them go. Even now, when you go home, and if you throw things where there might be things that you don't know how many years you kept in your fridge, but you have to throw them away.
오랫동안 아깝다고 방 안에 넣어놓고 있으면 똥 냄새만 날 뿐이야.
So those people who are able to throw well, they're actually doing the proper practice. And what do you have to throw? Those wrong things. And also people who can throw them away sooner is better. And even the dung, if you feel bad about throwing them, and if you just keep them in your house for a long time, then it is also changing into something worse. The dung will not change for something better. Well, I say this thing. Well, you didn't know, and so you got married, but then you realized that that person is violent, and so I said, just divorce right away. If the person has hit you, and also the violence is very difficult to disappear. And also, if you realize a person is also into gambling, you have to divorce right away. But if you feel that my husband is also into a little gambling, in order to practice vipassana properly, you have to get rid of all the wrong perceptions from its roots. So this is very important to practice vipassana. If there's a wrong perception, well, listen carefully.
결국 망하게 돼요.
Well, if the proper perception is not being practiced, and if you have the wrong perception in front of you, and if you gather samatha, and if you do the vipassana, then you are bound to concentrate to the wrong perceptions and wrong vipassana, and you're bound to go wrong. And so, what is samatha like? You need to have the proper thoughts deeply, and also it's almost like it's a strength that's almost like a mirror. That's samatha. But if that goes wrong, and if you practice vipassana with the wrong samatha, then you are bound to expand the wrong perception. If you feel that in this world the spirits, and if you have seen the ghost, and if you practice samatha, and if you do the vipassana, then even in vipassana you feel that you have seen the ghost, and you feel that you are actually able to see them better. You understand what I mean?
그래서 그 사람들이 상상의 날개를 자꾸 펴고 상상의 날개를 자꾸 펴고 나면
where's the question here?
조금 더 깊어지면
If you pray well, you can see it 640 times and also 1,100 times too. So those people, if they if they expand your imagination, and if it gets deeper, then it becomes like one religious sect. It becomes a wrong group of Buddhism. Oh, wrong group of religion.
사마타행을 하기 전에 그래서 철저하게 바른
So if you say the energy was if you feel the energy is being circulated, and if you also say many wrong things, that's also wrong.
여러분도 자꾸 이제 뭐냐면
So before you do samatha,
세속적 욕심이 없어지지도 않고 바른 견해도 아직
it's bound that it's very important, it's crucial to have the proper perception. That's the way to study. And without studying this, and even all of you, until now you have not been able to get rid of your greediness in this level, and you also have not developed the proper perception. But if you pray for 1,000 days, and if you have thirst for money, then what happens? You feel that, oh, yesterday I had a dream, and in the dream, oh, I saw money, or you saw like a gold. Oh, that's just a thought that was in your head, and those kind of things, they bring a little rupture in your head. So even a recitation of mantra, if you don't have the proper perception, but if you're just reciting, then you start saying the wrong things in your desire, and if you keep going on or pursuing them, then you go around doing a lot of different superstitious acts. You understand? So in order to practice vipassana properly, you have to get rid of all the wrong perception from the roots, and cutting them from the roots, that's the teaching of Buddha. That's the act of developing the proper perception. If you ask what is the trueness or suchness, then the answer is realizing that everything, all the objects or human beings, the essential part is void. So what is suchness? But you figure that there is a little property in all the objects. And even there are monks who teach that there is property to every being, but actually all the beings are void. It talks about emptiness. We call suchness or trueness as something that does not have any property. Well, this is something that you realize in the paramita of wisdom. And what is a paramita of wisdom? That is desiring or paramita of voidness. So in the pranya paramita, we also say pranya paramita, and that is actually the wisdom paramita. And where's the essence of it? The Avalokitesvara, when Avalokitesvara is the all five senses that forms our body, it also does not have any property or anything of its own, but it is also void, and that is the pranya paramita.
선정만 닦는 것을 가지고서 깨달음이라 그런다면 그런 외도도 다 있어. 그런데 외도의 바라는 수행이나 도교 수행을 왜 불교라고
So understanding through you need to understand it through the pranya, and it cannot be done with anything else.
불교가 다른 것이야.
It is also not proper with other source of paramita. They only act as assistants.
현상에 자성이 없다는 것을 어떤 바람일로 파악합니까?
They also have many different things in other religions, but they do not actually are there for voidness, and so they're actually different. In the Samdhiniro Mukhana Sutra, Buddha with which paramita do we realize that there is no selflessness? There is selflessness in all beings, or if that everything is void. Through which paramita do you realize? And the answer was you realize it with the pranya, with the wisdom, while being in samatha. The same as pranya paramita. In this world, there is no being that has its own form. Everything is caused with the relation, and everything disappears with the relations, and that is the actual reality. You have to ever to study that, and then only what happens if you study them. Well, if you don't have the property, then there's nothing to be attached for. And even I who has to have attachment, I'm also void, and even the object of the attachment is also void, and even the thought itself is void, then at which or at what do we have to have attachment at? If you do the vipassana on this, then all the things that you had attachments for or greediness for, they start to tear off. Even our body, that thing that we call our body, and when we live, they are also void. And so having attachment for our body, just because of having attachment, doesn't mean the spirit lasts. And also, just because you have attachments to your body, you do not live for a longer period of time. No matter how much you try or how hard you try, there's nothing that can keep you here for longer. When you're observing in that way, then there's no place for the greediness to be attached at. Even this body, there is no eternal property, and even the money that doesn't have any meaning, or the land or houses, money, what kind of meaning can it have? It's just that you have certain relations and you're just living for a short period of time. And even the houses, you're just living in the house for a short period of time as long as your relations permit.
벼락을 치듯이 집착해서 욕심이 나오려고 했던 게 다 끊어져요.
Therefore, you have to practice wisdom while residing in wisdom. So while practicing samatha, you have to observe the voidness, and there is a prana paramita. Then, just like lightning, the attachment which is surfacing, it stops away. It stops away.
공성이 아닌 것처럼 자꾸 느껴질 때가 많단 말이야.
So while residing in samatha, you have to practice the wisdom or prana. If you're not in the samatha, then distractions will keep arising, and you feel that it is happening momentarily and it is not happening, and you feel that it is not void. And so even all of you, if there is anything that has eternal property, and you can also believe that you're with that forever because it has a form of eternity. And if you misunderstand, and if you have the wrong idea, and if you persist that you have your attachment for something that's eternal, and just because you believe in that, and if you question if there be form out of it, there's no form. The answer is no. And from the attachment, the absence of property itself, if you ask if they change, they don't change at all. They are as they were, but it is actually your misunderstanding. Treeness refers to absence of self and selflessness of phenomenon. And what is trueness? And if you ask, how do we experience the voidness? The agni that's from the consciousness, or agni from absence of consciousness, when all of them disappear, we call it trueness or suchness. They do not have a priority, and they do not have eternity, and we understand that void, and after confirming that they are void, and when the attachment has all disappeared, we call the state as the state of trueness. Amongst them, we especially refer to selflessness of phenomenon. If you study in detail, then scholars have different perceptions. In this text, they study the selflessness of phenomenon a little more detailed than the absence of self. When we say absence of self, it refers to a lump, which is either psychological or even in materialistic way. So when you talk about something of self, we are not talking about something that has been gained together and has formed itself, but we refer to the state or the form that we are confirming ourselves. Say it is I. The self does not exist in this lay world. Even in this dimension, and this is therefore we say the absence of self and the form that when we have understood the position or the presence of ourselves properly. Because we have the wrong understanding or the wrong idea, we keep believing that there's something that exists and there's something that we can have attachments at. We believe so. The Kamla who was the great student of the holy teacher Shantarakshita, belongs to the mid school of the yoga tantrika, and this school of thought they'll emphasize on two different, two broad and also minute level of the selflessness of phenomenon. The principal agent and the object is not different, and the subjectivity and also the object of consciousness is not different. And knowing that is acknowledging the trueness at the very broad level. So about the selflessness of phenomenon, it says that the principal agent and the object, they are not two different beings. So it is in the state of the selflessness of phenomena, but well, it is acknowledging the trueness, but it is also a broader experimentation of it. So realizing that you and I are not two different beings, well, it is very detailed. It is not very detailed trueness, but it is knowing the suchness in the broader or harsher level. So Buddha spoke about the evil and goodness, and also the light and darkness is not two, and you and I are not the two things, two different things. And he spoke about them in a metaphorical manner, and that was in order to explain the selflessness of phenomena. So if you study this in a philosophical manner, where when you talk about darkness and brightness, it seems like there are two different things. Before that, there are two different things. But how are they not two different things? But if we argue about this in a logical manner, when there's darkness, and if the brightness approaches, and if we say the darkness doesn't change, then even if the brightness approaches, the darkness should reside. If they are the same thing, if they are one same thing, then they should exist together. So when we are talking about the darkness, are we talking about the state where there is no brightness? When you are talking about the brightness, it is a state where there is no darkness, right? So therefore, the darkness and the brightness are not two different things, but they are actually one same thing. Well, the hand's palm and the back of the hand, depending on the direction that we are looking at, sometimes it is a palm and sometimes it is the back of the hand. But this cannot exist as two different beings. It has to exist as one hand. But normally, when we talk about this, we say, since we do not want to see the darkness, we try to explain in a way that we get rid of the darkness so that the brightness comes out. But can you get rid of the darkness eternally? Why can't we get rid of the darkness? Well, that's because the brightness or lightness is not eternal, isn't it? Since the brightness is not eternal, the darkness, when you talk about the brightness, it is a state when the brightness has disappeared. But if you ask, is this the state when there is no brightness? It is not so. Well, the brightness has become the darkness. Well, if we explain about this one more thing, then when you talk about the night and the day, in the night it is dark, and in the day when the sun rises, does it mean that this area has changed or transformed? This area still remains the same, and therefore the minute or the very harsh, when you're talking about the 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 selfless phenomenon, when we say when we're departing from the relative the reality, we say we are experimenting or experiencing those selflessness or phenomenon. Well, when you talk about this labor union, if they see the people as someone that they need to overcome, or well, that is also a wrong idea given from the Western point of view. And also, if you say if the employer sees the laborer as someone of their use, then the conflict that exists between them will never disappear. That will last forever. When we say the users, well, users they cannot use without the laborer. But the way that they behave to the labor, you can see that they're going to chase them all of them away, and they're going to work, but they don't. Well, at some point of time, the laborers they say they're going to run the company, but the laborers they cannot run the company, no matter how much they try. And also, it's the same. So even if they do not want to, even if they are not very satisfied with their wives, the husband is not able to do the work just like how the wife did. Well, although he can wake up in the morning, clean the house, and prepare everything like wife does, but he cannot have a baby. It is something that is not possible, isn't it? And so, in reality, even amongst the couples, from the outside, the wife and the husband, they seem like they're two different beings, and also they're apart, but in reality they're not two different entities. Well, actually you cannot separate them. If you know about that clearly, you also not argue between the couples. Why is that so? Because you realize that that person is you. If you feel that, how did I believe in such a man as my husband? Then the question arises, who could not trust who? Do not just mumble around. You cannot trust who? The person who asks this question cannot trust themselves, and those people, they are not able to live they are not able to live a life in a truthness, but they are just living a selfish life, and so it is not part of them, but it is just appearance where they have been formed. It is just like the palm and the back of the hand. But then if you deny about this, the fact, then this will only result in your misery. In denial, if you just pinch your palm, or if you're pinching the back of your hand, then it will only result in the pain. So even when you're having argument, this will lead to nowhere, isn't it? So if you try to irritate your husband, then you get irritated too. And even your husband, if he yells at you once, then the husband is also in the very uncomfortable state. Both of them are in the same state, and so eventually what happens? Well, outside appearance, it seems like there are two different beings, but if you're looking at it in the trueness as a fact, then you realize that they are not two different entities. And you should not also divide them as the object of consciousness and also the subjectivity of the consciousness. Well, if you see that you are the subject and the person is the object, or the principal agent and the object, that is also incorrect. They are just one. They are just separated externally, but in reality, they are actually one. And so, if you understand that, then we can say that the lay people and Buddha are one. But then, without understanding this, and if you say the Buddha and lay people are one, then what do people say? The lay people, they would just say, I'm also Buddha. And then you're bound to say you're not actually Buddha. And so, the story about this not being two, or the conflict, the story which arises conflict, if you know that, then there will be no conflict at all. So as a bodhisattva, when they look at the whole world or whole people, in the beginning, the Avalokitesvara looks at everyone like mother, but Avalokitesvara looks at everyone as they are not two different beings, but they are actually the same beings. And only if they are looked down as they are, well, it is not their responsibility, or it is not something that they have to do, but that's the reality. And also, looking at the voidness of world phenomenon in a direct manner, it is actually seeing the trueness in the very detail. So every phenomenon, whether it is cosmos or whether it's universe or solar system or the sun or animals or humans or even trees, or even if it's a microscopic beings, but if you are just looking at them as they are, then there's no being in this world that has a property that is eternal. And so even their property or characters is the same. And if you think about that, then you can also question yourself, at what point are you going to have your attachments? And in order not to have attachments, and you're not just lying and say they're void, but since they're void, there is no reason for you to have your attachments. But because we misunderstand and we misinterpret, we keep having our attachments. Amongst all the scriptures spoken by Buddha, the Paramita scriptures which Buddha has spoken for 21 years, is about all these stories, and all the Prana Paramita, it talks about the voidness. And those Paramita scriptures, they talk about this topic in a very deepest depth. And what is wisdom is knowing the voidness. And what is voidness? It is knowing that there's absence of I, the wisdom of knowing the absence of I. From the absence of self, the concept of I is very important. With the proper understanding of I, we can have a proper understanding of the selflessness of phenomenon. most of us, if you believe that I exist as it is, we feel that we exist as it is, and this leads to a lot of sadness and also happiness. Everything that I feel, I speak, and if you feel that all these things are me, and if if I am everything, and if you think about this, well, for example, if you say if someone who is doing music, and with one note of the music, if you are attached to the same note, or if you're attached to a certain taste, all these things. If you think about all the phenomenon as there's something happening as I, then it is a misunderstanding. It is just a phenomenon that's going on. And that's why the things that we feel right now, having a child, and if I feel great, then my son is good to me, and that's the state where I feel happy, then you are bound to have suffering out of it. The ancient different schools believe that I exist. Amongst them, one school of thoughts in India, they also think about this lump that's gathered as I, whether it is spiritual or in a material way. They were to see that they are something that is gathered as I, and this school of thoughts, in fact, sees the Atman and also object as two different entities. And if you see it like that, then it is not okay. In reality, the consciousness, the thing that arises is consciousness, and also our body and also the senses, everything that's happening from here, well, they just happen together as one. There is no Atman as such separately, and it is not something that because of the Atman it gets control. But a lot of people think that there are two different beings, but that's not correct. Where now, when we are looking at our two hands, then we feel that, well, when you're looking at the onion, and when you feel that it is an onion, then we can see and feel the onion. But without seeing onion ever in my life, even if I have eyes and also have the brain, I am not able to figure out what is onion. So the things that I see, or the brain that I have, with the simultaneous reaction, it happens. It leads to result. So there are not two different beings that works in two different ways. So in olden times, a lot of schools of thought, and also a lot of people believe that there's a being that doesn't change, and they thought that they intake different beings and see the world. But when you actually see the reality, then there are no two different beings.
나라는 아트만과 그 대상이 따로 있다. 또 우리가 이 나라는 지금 색수상식과 아트만 이것과 그다음에 저 대상이 또 다른 것이라고 본다면 그것도
They also see I as a being that there is a lump that's to use whether spiritually or materially. And also this school of thought Atman, and also the object as two different beings. Well, that is also a wrong thing. Although there are two different shapes. Well, I said about this before. When you're looking at the mirror, are you looking at the mirror, or are you looking at myself? You're looking at yourself through the mirror. So you're not looking at the mirror, but actually you're looking at yourself. Well, when you're looking at the mirror, you're actually seeing your face, right? And you're looking at the mirror to see ourselves. But when we say you're looking at the mirror, well, there's no one who is actually looking at the mirror to look at the mirror. So in order to look at the mirror, are we sitting in the morning and for 1 hour every day? No. So when you see the object called mirror, we are actually seeing ourselves. So when we see the trees, are we seeing at the tree, or are you looking at me? Are you seeing at me who is perceiving the tree? Well, so the tree is not actually in your head. Well, if you know, if you fear that such a big tree is coming into your head, it's going to cause a lot of problems. So the reaction or the feelings that you get while looking at other beings, well, there's no separate being as you perceive, but you're talking about the different phenomenon. So in fact, you're looking at your son and your daughter, but in reality, through the object, you're actually seeing yourself, which your consciousness or your mind has been reflected. Through consciousness, you are seeing yourself. So you feel that you're looking at your children, but it's actually your thoughts. And so, if you are looking at your son as he is, then why is the thought why is your thought and your son's thought different? Where your and sons share the same thoughts? If you feel that you are looking at your son, then your son and your feelings should be the same, right? But if you say, well, my son is so handsome, and if your son said no, then, well, it is just you, or it is just me who's looking at the sun. So all the things that you perceive, or all the things that you feel, that's all your thought, but it is not your son's, it is not the world's, it is not of any. So in Avatamskara Sutra, it's written that it is a world that you have aroused and you are seeing, while the song that this world is in havoc. Who sang the song? How is the lyric? The handsome people live as they are and ugly people live as they do. Well, it is quite right. This world is in havoc. Well, it's a havoc.
그러니까 생각해 보시오. 부처님이 바라보면 중생이 부처개수 아니겠소? 에? 당신이 봤으니까 부처지. 우리가 보면 부처님도 부처님 안 같아.
So, well, think about it. If Buddha looks at the wall, then is the lay people Buddha to him? Well, that's because Buddha look at lay people, it is Buddha. But if you look at Buddha, then even the Buddha does not look like Buddha. Sometimes Buddha look like grandfather. Sometimes Buddha looks at someone who is very greedy. Sometimes Buddha looks like just yellow. Well, there are a lot of people who also has Buddha as Buddha in the house because he's also yellow in color. And so a lot of people say that if you just have Buddha in your house, then you earn money. But then if you just hang the cross at your home, you also eat your food. So for us, even when you're looking at Buddha, Buddha doesn't look like Buddha to us. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's a ghost. And so one priest said once, where the teaching room is the center of all the ghosts. But then, and so I said, well, you're the avatar of all. Well, he's actually just seeing the world as how he wants to. Where the things that we see, well, you have seen your husband for 40 to 50 years now, right? But you have never seen your husband in reality. Have you seen your husband? No, right? Well, I feel so lonely.
에이고 참.
You just live as the outer part of it, and so if you like how he does, then you say he's the greatest person. But then if he's not doing as how you want, then you also curse how his behaviors.
세계를 갖다가 다른 사람이 그 사람을 이해한다는 것은 불가능에 가까워. 불가능에 가까워.
Well, we just live our life like that. So
그래서 이 세상은
the world that we see due to our dharma, well, it is quite impossible to understand the world.
종종
It's impossible.
세계가 있고 개개의 세계가 다 각각이라 그랬어. 그래서 같은 침대에 누워.
So that's why this world, at times, this world has different worlds, and there are also many worlds that has its own distinctive qualities. But we also say each world is different. So you're lying on the same bed with your husband, but you think about something else. There's a different world. So even if you're lying together in the same bed, it's possible that one person is looking at the heaven and the one person is looking at the hell. The husband might be wondering, with whom should I drink tomorrow? And the wife could be lying down and thinking, well, I like the mink coat.
핵심이 뭐냐면 공성을 체험해야 돼. 그래야 서로가 알아.
A lot of people just live their life in a very common way and they pass away.
누구도 그 사람을 이해할 수도 없어.
So in Dharma Sutra, they also is saying that only if you feel the voidness in this world, then they know the world in detail. Well, if you have your own world, then no one can understand the person and no one can actually do anything for that person. So what do we say? We say, oh, well, I'm living because I'm such a great person. Well, that could also be right. Even you just feel very snobbish about yourself and you carry on with your life.
부모가 자식을 이해하는 것도 불가능해.
If I say you're ugly, then people will say, well, you have not helped me at all, even in me becoming handsome or more ugly or beautiful. So it is impossible for the child to understand the parents, and also it is impossible for the parents to understand the child. And you question yourself, why is the child from me different? But then the child could also question, well, you have given birth to me, or you brought me out to this world, but why don't you understand me? It's the same rhetorical question. Where there are a lot of arguments and there are a lot of problems, but then you just live on and you pass away eventually. So if you don't empty yourself, and if there is no absence of self, and if there's no selflessness of phenomena, then how can you intake them all? You have to let go of all the perceptions, and if you don't empty yourself, then you're not able to see them. And so, but then to clean through the meditation and many different things, if you empty the parts a little, then you are able to see a little better. If you narrow it out further more, then you are not able to see at all.